I'm not writing this to get famous or to end up on some creepy Reddit thread, even though I know that's exactly where this is going to land, any related organization. I'm writing this because I honestly don't know if I'm going to be safe tonight. I'm currently sitting in a Motel 6 about 3 towns over, shaking so bad I can barely type on my phone. It started with a couch, a stupid, beige, sectional couch I found on an online classified site, listed as free, must go today. That should have been the first red flag, right? Nothing is ever actually free. I was broke, just out of college, and sleeping on a bare mattress on the floor. I thought I was lucky. I thought I was finally catching a break. I didn't know that bringing that thing into my apartment was effectively marking myself. Any related organization, I didn't realize until it was too late that the person giving it away wasn't trying to clear out space. He was trying to create an entry point. If you see a deal that looks too good to be true, just keep scrolling. Please. Because the price I paid wasn't money, my sanity. So, let's rewind a bit. To understand why I was stupid enough to do this, you have to understand my situation. I wasn't just kind of broke. I was aggressively, painfully broke. I had just moved into this one-bedroom apartment in a complex that was mostly populated by divorced dads and college students who partied too hard on Tuesdays. Smelled perpetually of stale carpet cleaner and someone else's cigarette, smoke drifting through the vents. It was mine. That was the important part. Any related organization. It was my first real adult apartment where I wasn't sharing a bathroom with 3 other dudes who didn't know how to aim. Problem was the echo. I had absolutely nothing. I'm talking sleeping on a pile of blankets on the floor because I couldn't afford a bed frame yet. Living room was just a vast expanse of cheap, beige carpet. For the first 2 weeks, I ate dinner sitting cross-legged on the floor, using a cardboard packing box as a table. Funny how quickly the novelty of independence wears off when your back starts spasms because you haven't sat on an actual cushioned surface in 14 days. When I started scrolling, I spent hours on those buy and sell apps. You know the ones? Marketplace, Craigslist, ARP. I developed this obsession with finding the perfect deal. I'd scroll past the scams, people trying to sell beat-up IKEA furniture for more than the retail price, selling used mattresses, which, hard pass, obviously. Then I saw it. It was listed simply, sectional, free, must go today. The photo was terrible. It looked like it had been taken with a potato in a dimly lit room. You could barely make out the shape. Just this looming L-shaped mass in the corner of a living room. But the description was promising. Moving out of state, can't take it with me. Clean, smoke-free home. No pets. One with a truck gets it. I honestly didn't think twice. My brain just saw free and sectional and did the math. A couch like that would cost me $600 at a discount store. This was a steal. I messaged the seller immediately. His profile name was just Greg. No last name, default profile picture. This still available. I typed, or any related organization. Feeling that desperate hope you get when you think you've found a loophole in the universe. Reply came back in under 30 seconds. Yes. Can you come now? I looked at the clock. 6:45 p.m. on a Tuesday. I had just gotten off my shift at the call center. I was tired, hungry, and gross. I wasn't going to lose this couch. I texted my buddy Mark, who owned a beat-up Ford Ranger and begged him to let me borrow it. I promised him a case of beer and a pizza. He grumbled but agreed. Dropping the truck off at my place 20 minutes later, Greg sent me was for a subdivision about 30 minutes out of town. It was one of those cookie-cutter neighborhoods where every third house looks identical, painted in varying shades of innocuous gray and tan. It was startlingly normal. I guess part of me expected a shack in the woods or a sketchy storage unit, but this was just suburbia. I pulled up to the house around 7:45 p.m. It was a nice place. 2 stories, manicured lawn, a sedan in the driveway. Light was on. And there it was. The couch was already sitting in the driveway. That should have been great, right? It meant I didn't have to awkwardly navigate a stranger's hallways or pivot around tight corners while making small talk. It felt a little dismissive, like it had been ejected, broken down into 2 pieces. The main sofa and the chaise section. I parked the truck and got out. It was quiet. And you know that specific kind of suburban silence where you can hear a dog barking 3 streets over? Your immediate vicinity is dead silent. It was like that. I walked up to the couch and inspected it. Honestly, in better condition than I expected. It was a soft, microfiber material, a neutral oatmeal color, no visible tears. No weird stains that I could see in the fading daylight. I pressed my hand into the cushion. Firm. Barely used. You here for the sectional? I jumped about a foot in the air. Garage door had opened silently while I was inspecting the merchandise. Standing there was a guy. Greg, presumably, aggressively normal. Khaki shorts, a polo shirt tucked in, generic running shoes. He looked like a high school math teacher or an accountant. He was holding a bottle of water, smiling a tight, "Yeah," I said, trying to lower my heart rate. "Sorry, didn't hear the door. I'm Sam." "Greg," he said. He didn't offer to shake hands. He just gestured to the couch with the water bottle. "She's all yours. Handles are on the sides." "Thanks, man," I said, grabbing one end of the larger piece. "I really appreciate this. Buying furniture is a nightmare right now." Greg just watched me struggle for a second before setting his water down. "It's a hassle." "Here, grab that end." He helped me lift it. He was stronger than he looked. The main section into the bed of the Ranger. As we shoved it toward the cab, I brushed against his arm. His skin was freezing. Not just cool, cold. Like he'd been standing in a walk-in freezer before coming out. "It's heavier than it looks," he muttered. "Solid frame," I joked, trying to fill the silence. He didn't laugh. We got the second piece in. I strapped everything down with the bungee cords I'd brought. I was sweating. Greg hadn't broken a sweat at all. He just stood at the end of the driveway, hands in his pockets, watching me secure the load. "So, moving out of state?" I asked, double-checking a knot. "Something like that," he said, was flat. Not rude, just void of inflection. Needed it gone. "House closes on Friday." "Well, you saved my life," I said, wiping my forehead. "My apartment is basically a cave right now." "Enjoy it," Greg said. "Any organization." He turned around and started walking back toward the garage before I even got in the truck. "Drive safe." Or the garage door started closing before he was even fully inside. I got in the truck, feeling a weird sense of relief washing over me. I attributed it to the social anxiety of interacting with a stranger. I'm not great with people I don't know, and the transaction, while efficient, felt stiff. But hey, I had a free couch. The drive home was uneventful. I kept checking the rearview mirror, paranoid that the couch was going to fly out and cause a pileup on the interstate. But it stayed put. I had the radio up loud, singing along to some early 2000s rock, feeling victorious, imagining how good the apartment was going to look. I was mentally arranging the living room. Getting the thing upstairs was the real challenge. I lived on the second floor, no elevator. I couldn't call Mark because he was on a date, which is why he loaned me the truck instead of helping. So, just me vs. gravity. It took me 45 minutes of grunting, swearing, and nearly crushing my toes to get both pieces into my living room. I had to take the door off its hinges to get the ELP section through. By the time I snapped the two pieces together in the center of the room, drenched in sweat, and my arms felt like jelly. But God, it looked good. It transformed the space. Suddenly, just an empty box with dirty carpet. It was a living room. It fit perfectly against the far wall, facing the spot where I had my TV set up on a milk crate. I flopped down onto it. It let out a soft whoosh of air as the cushions compressed. It was comfortable, really comfortable. It smelled strongly of cleaning product, like lemon and bleach. I figured Greg must have given it a deep scrub before putting it out. Nice guy, weird vibes or not. I ordered that pizza I promised Mark, but since he wasn't there, I ate half of it myself, sitting right there on the chaise lounge. I turned on the TV and put on The Office for the 1000th time. It felt normal. It felt safe. I remember thinking, this is it. I'm making it. Around 1100 p.m., I started drifting off. The couch was way more comfortable than my pile of blankets in the bedroom. I decided, screw it, I'll just crash here tonight. Christening the new furniture, right? I grabbed a pillow from the bedroom, killed the lights, and settled in. The apartment was dark, any related organization, illuminated only by the streetlights filtering through the blinds, casting slatted shadows across the beige fabric. Quiet. I fell asleep almost instantly, wrapped in the smell of lemon cleaner and the satisfaction of a bargain well hunted. I didn't know it then. That was the last peaceful night of sleep I was going to get. I woke up around 300 a.m. because my arm had fallen asleep. You know that dead pins and needles feeling. I rolled over to shake it out, expecting to hit the back of the couch. But I didn't hit the couch. My hand brushed against something that felt like nylon, like the fabric of a windbreaker. I froze. My eyes were open, staring into the dark living room, trying to adjust. The texture was gone as soon as I felt it. I convinced myself it was just the throw blanket I'd been using. I sat up, rubbing my face. The apartment was silent, hummed in the kitchen. I lay back down, feeling foolish. Just a dream, I told myself. Just the new environment. I closed my eyes and drifted back under, to the fact that the atmosphere in the room had shifted. The air felt heavier, denser, and if I had been just a little more awake, I might have noticed that the lemon smell was starting to fade by something faint copper-like and old. But I slept, and the couch held me. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd gone 10 rounds with a heavyweight boxer. You know that deep level exhaustion you get when you have the flu? It was like that. My joints ached, my neck was stiff. There was this weird, metallic taste in the back of my throat. I'd been sucking on a handful of pennies all night. I rolled off the couch and hit the floor, groaning. The sunlight was streaming in through the blinds, slicing up the room in bright, dusty bars. It should have been a cheerful scene. Morning in the new apartment, sun shining, free furniture. As I stood up and stretched, my back cracked with a sound like a pistol shot, and a wave of nausea rolled over me. Looked down at the couch. In the daylight, it looked innocuous. Just a big, beige lump of microfiber. Something about the way it sat in the room that bothered me. It felt too big now. Last night, it seemed like a perfect fit. Now, it felt like it was swallowing the space. It dominated the living room, absorbing the light rather than reflecting it. I shook my head, trying to clear the cobwebs. Coffee, I thought. I just need coffee. I went into the kitchen. An open concept deal separated from the living room by a small breakfast bar. And as I brewed my cheap instant coffee, I kept glancing over my shoulder at the living room. I couldn't explain it. I had this prickling sensation on the back of my neck. You know that feeling when you're in a crowded room and you just know someone is staring at you. You turn around and sure enough, lock eyes with a stranger. It was that. But the room was empty. I drank my coffee standing up, leaning against the counter, staring at the sectional. The cushions looked lumpy. I hadn't noticed that the night before. The seat where I had slept was depressed, obviously, corner section. The part where the two pieces joined looked slightly misshapen, like the stuffing had bunched up in a weird way. "Stop it," I said out loud, sounded flat and dead in the empty apartment. I got ready for work. I was working a shift at a call center for a health insurance company, a job that required zero brainpower and infinite patience. Usually, I zoned out, went on autopilot, and the day flew by. But that day, I couldn't focus. I sat in my cubicle, headset on, listening to people scream at me about deductibles. My mind was back in my apartment. I kept picturing the couch. It was obsessive, intrusive thoughts. I'd be in the middle of explaining a copay, and suddenly, a vivid image of that beige fabric would flash in my mind. Texture of it, the smell, and the silence. That was the thing that really started to gnaw at me around lunchtime. My apartment complex was loud. The walls were paper, thin. I usually heard my upstairs neighbor walking around. CI called him Stompy. The couple next door arguing about money. Constant hum of traffic from the highway. But last night, after I brought the couch in, dead silence. I hadn't heard Stompy. I hadn't heard the traffic. It was like the apartment had been sealed inside a vacuum. At the time, I thought I was just tired. Now, sitting under the fluorescent hum of the office lights, it felt unnatural, like the world had stopped at my front door. By the time 500 p.m. rolled around, I didn't want to go home. Any related organization. I sat in the borrowed truck in the parking lot for 20 minutes, just scrolling on my phone, wasting time. I told myself I was just decompressing. But deep down, in that lizard part of my brain that handles survival instincts, stalling, I was afraid to go back, which was ridiculous. It was a couch from a boring guy named Greg in the suburbs. I finally drove home. The sun was setting, casting those long, melancholy shadows that make everything look a little sinister. I parked, walked up the stairs, stood in front of my door. I put the key in the lock and hesitated. I listened. Nothing. No TV sounds from the neighbors. No footsteps. Just a heavy, suffocating silence leaking through the wood of the door. I turned the key and pushed the door open. The smell hit me first. The lemon scent was completely gone. Place was that smell I'd noticed briefly the night before. Old copper. It was mixed with something else. Musk. Not a cologne musk, but an animal musk. Like a wet dog, a closet that hasn't been opened in 50 years. It was faint, barely there, but it triggered a gag reflex instantly. I flipped the light switch. The living room was exactly as I'd left it. The couch sat there and beige and silent. Okay, I muttered, closing the door behind me. I locked it. Then I deadbolted it. I put the chain on. I walked into the living room and threw my keys on the counter. I refused to be afraid of furniture. I was 23 years old, for God's sake. I grabbed a beer from the fridge, cracked it open, and marched over to the couch. I sat down in the corner spot, right in the L shape, comfortable. I couldn't deny that. It wrapped around me. I turned on the TV, cranking the volume up a little louder than usual to combat the silence. I put on a comedy special, needing to hear laughter. For an hour, it was fine. I drank my beer, I laughed at the jokes, I relaxed. Smell seemed to fade. Olfactory fatigue, I guessed. My shoulders dropped. I started to feel stupid for being so paranoid. Then, I felt it. I was leaning back, my arm draped over the back of the sofa. Something pushed back. It wasn't a shove. It was subtle, like pressure. Like the stuffing inside the back cushion shifted against my weight. I froze. Heart hammered a staccato rhythm against my ribs. I slowly pulled my arm away and sat forward, stared at the back cushion. The fabric was smooth. No lumps. Just the foam expanding, I told myself. Cushions have memory foam or springs or whatever. It's just settling. I tried to focus on the TV again. 10 minutes later, the silence returned. Even with the TV on, the sound seemed thin, like the audio wasn't traveling. The jokes from the comedian sounded tinny and distant or any organization, like they were coming from a radio in another room, even though I was 5 feet from the screen. The air in the room grew heavy. The temperature dropped. I checked the thermostat. 72 degrees. But I was shivering. I pulled my legs up onto the couch, curling into a ball. I kept glancing at the other end of the sectional part. It was empty. Obviously. But my eyes kept being drawn to it. The same feeling as when you're walking down a dark street and you check behind you because the hair on your arms stands up. My body was screaming at me that I wasn't alone in the room. I grabbed the remote to turn the volume up even higher. Hand slipped and fell between the cushions. Damn it. I hissed. I shoved my hand into the crack between the seat and the backrest to fish it out. It's a universal experience, right? Digging for a remote or change in a couch. You expect to feel crumbs, maybe a lost pen, the rough fabric of the liner. My fingers brushed against the plastic of the remote. I grabbed it. But as I pulled my hand back, my knuckles grazed something else deep in the crevice. It was warm. Not room temperature warm. Body heat warm. Any related organization. I yanked my hand out like I'd been burned, scrambling off the couch and stumbling back toward the kitchen. I dropped the remote. It clattered on the floor, the batteries popping out. I stood by the kitchen island, breathing hard, staring at the crevice. "What the hell?" I whispered. I stared at that dark line between the cushions. Just a shadow. It was just a couch. Friction, I thought. I was sitting there, my body heat transferred to the foam. That's how insulation works, you idiot. But I hadn't been sitting in the crack. The heat I felt wasn't surface heat. It felt like it came from inside. I grabbed a flashlight from my junk drawer. I needed to see. I needed to prove to myself that there wasn't a nest of rats or something living inside the frame. That would explain the heat, right? Rats. I walked back to the couch, wielding the flashlight like a weapon. I knelt down in front of the section where I'd been sitting. I spread the cushions apart with one hand and shone the light down into the abyss. Dust bunnies, chaotic sprinkle of crumbs, probably from my pizza last night. A dime. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I said to the empty room, "Nothing." I reached in and grabbed the dime. Then I saw it. Way down, caught in the mesh lining where the back meets the base, something glinted. It wasn't metal. It looked wet. I leaned in closer, squinting. I reached down, my fingers stretching to their limit. I pinched the object and pulled it free. I sat back on my heels, shining the flashlight on my palm. It was a fingernail, not a clipping, not a jagged piece bitten off in anxiety. It was a whole fingernail, painted a chipped, dark red, and at the base, where the cuticle would be, there was a tiny, dried tag of skin. My stomach dropped to the floor. Copper smell surged back, violent and overwhelming. I dropped the nail onto the carpet. I scrambled backward, walking until my back hit the wall. Okay, I thought, my brain scrambling for logic, desperate to reject the horror. It's a used couch. People are gross. Someone lost a fake nail. It's an acrylic nail. That's all. I picked it up again, trembling. I pressed it between my fingers. It wasn't plastic. It was flexible. It was organic. I stood up, wiped my hand on my jeans violently, trying to scrub the sensation away. I walked to the kitchen and washed my hands with dish soap, scrubbing until my skin was raw. I should have thrown the couch out right then. I should have dragged it to the dumpster and set it on fire. But I didn't, and this is the part I hate admitting. This is the part where you scream at the screen and call me a moron. I rationalized it. I told myself Greg had a wife or a daughter. Maybe she had an injury. Maybe it was an old injury. Yes. Disgusting, absolutely. But was it supernatural? Was it a threat? No. Just biological refuse left behind in a second-hand transaction. I wasn't going to throw away a $600 piece of furniture because of one gross find. I grabbed the vacuum. I grabbed the carpet cleaner. I went to war. I vacuumed every inch of that thing. I scrubbed it until the water in the tank turned black. I sprayed half a bottle of Febreze on it. I cleaned until I felt like I had exorcised the grossness. By 10:00 p.m., I was exhausted again. Physical exertion had burned off the adrenaline. The couch smelled like chemicals and lavender now. It looked clean. I sat down on it again. It was a reclaiming. I wasn't going to let a piece of keratin scare me out of my own living room. I turned the lights off, leaving just the blue glow of the TV. I laid down, pulling my blanket up. It's fine. It's just a thing. Just wood and fabric. I drifted off to sleep, facing the back of the couch. Don't know what time it was when I woke up. The room was pitch black, The TV had gone into sleep mode. I woke up because of the sound. It was a sound I knew well from my childhood. It was the sound of someone settling. The creak of wood, the soft compression of foam, the rustle of fabric. It came from right behind me, lying on the edge of the chaise. The sound came from the main section of the sofa. My eyes snapped open, staring into the darkness of the room. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The frame settling, I begged. Just the frame. I felt the shift. The couch dipped. It wasn't a small dip. It was the distinct, any related organization-iable weight of a person sitting down on the cushion directly adjacent to my head. I felt the fabric pull tight under the new weight. I felt the vibration travel through the frame and into my ribs. I lay there, frozen in terror, facing away from the presence. Silence. No breathing. No movement. Just the weight. I squeezed my eyes shut. Count to 3, I told myself. Count to 3 and turn around. It's nothing. Your imagination. 1. The weight shifted closer. 2. I felt a coldness radiating from behind me. Not a draft. Of heat. 3. I whipped around, sitting up and fumbling for my phone to use the screen light, a scream already building in my throat. I lit up the room. The couch was empty. The cushion next to me was depressed, slowly rising back up, as if someone had just stood up the microsecond I moved. And there, in the center of the cushion where the weight had been, was a wet, dark stain. It was the size of a handprint. I didn't scream. I couldn't. The air had been sucked out of my lungs. I scrambled off the couch, backing away until I hit the front door. I stood there, phone flashlight shaking violently, training the beam on the spot. The stain was fading, evaporating before my eyes. Within 10 seconds, it was gone. Smell remained. That thick, cloying musk. And for the first time, I realized why the apartment was so quiet. It wasn't that the couch was blocking sound from the outside. It was that everything else. The mice in the walls, the neighbors. They were hiding. They were quiet because a predator had entered the territory. I grabbed my keys. I was leaving. I was going to sleep in the truck. But as I reached for the doorknob, the lock clicked. I hadn't touched it. I stared at the deadbolt. I had locked it. I had chained it. The chain was still on. The deadbolt had turned. From the inside, I looked back at the couch. In the flashing light of my dying phone screen, I saw it, just for a fraction of a second. Seam between the two cushions, the crack where I had found the nail, it widened. It didn't tear. It opened, like a mouth taking a breath. And from the darkness inside the couch, a pale, milky eye blinked at me. Then the seam snapped shut. I don't remember unlocking the truck. I don't remember running down the stairs. My memory of those 30 seconds is just a blur of adrenaline and the phantom sensation of that wet, milky eye staring at me from inside my furniture. I only came back to myself when I was locking the doors of the Ford Ranger, my chest heaving, my bare feet pressed against the cold rubber of the pedals. I had left my shoes upstairs. I had left everything upstairs. I peeled out of the parking lot like I had robbed the place, driving until I found a 24-hour Walmart parking lot about 5 miles away. I parked under a flickering halogen light, wrapped my arms around myself, and just shook. You know how your brain tries to protect you, how it tries to edit the footage of your life to make it make sense. Sitting there in the safety of the truck, Surrounded by the mundane hum of society, I started gaslighting myself. It was a marble, I thought. Someone lost a marble inside the couch years ago. The pressure of me sitting made it pop up. The light reflected off it, like an eye because you were tired and terrified. And the lock. The lock is old. The mechanism is loose. The vibration of the door closing earlier made it slip. It sounded pathetic. I knew it was pathetic, but the alternative was accepting that my sectional sofa had blink reflexes. I managed to doze off for an hour or so when the sun started beating through the windshield. It was 7:00 a.m. The world was bright, loud, and normal. People were walking into Walmart to buy groceries. The horror of the night before felt like a fever dream evaporating in the morning light. But I couldn't go back to the apartment. Not yet. I needed to prove to myself that Greg was real. That he was just a weird guy, a human being, who sold me a weird couch. I could talk to him. If I could just see him mowing his lawn or getting his mail. I felt like the nightmare would dissolve. I still had the address in my GPS history. I started the truck and drove back out to the suburbs. It was agonizing. Every time I hit a bump, my nervous system flared up. As I pulled into that cookie cutter subdivision, I felt a little steadier. It was just a house. Just a guy. I pulled up to the curb in front of the house where I'd picked up the couch. Stomach dropped through the floorboards. The house was different. Not structurally. It was the same beige siding, same two-story layout, but in the harsh light of day, the illusion of lived-in normalcy was gone. Wasn't manicured. It was overgrown, patchy, and choked with weeds. In the windows were all broken or missing, looking like jagged teeth. And right there, stuck in the center of the overgrown lawn, was a wooden post. A faux arcel sign lay face down in the dirt next to it, bleached by the sun, looking like it had been there for years. There was no sedan in the driveway. No porch light. Looked dead. I got out of the truck, my bare feet stinging on the asphalt. I walked up the driveway. I called out. My voice cracked. Silence. I walked up to the garage door. It was closed. I cupped my hands against the glass of a side window and peered in. The garage was empty. Completely empty. No boxes. No oil stains. Just a concrete slab covered in a thick layer of dust. "Can I help you?" I spun around. An older woman was standing on the sidewalk next door, walking a golden retriever. She was looking at me with that specific neighborhood watch suspicion. "Hi," I said, trying to look less like a lunatic despite being barefoot and wearing wrinkled clothes. I bought a couch from the guy who lives here yesterday. Greg, I think I left my wallet in his garage." The woman frowned. She pulled the dog leash tighter. "Nobody lives there," she said. Her voice was sharp. "That house has been in foreclosure for 8 months. I stared at her. "No, I was here yesterday, around 7:30. There was a guy, Greg, khaki shorts, polo shirt. He opened the garage for me." The woman's expression shifted from suspicion to something like pity, maybe concern for my mental state. "Honey," she said slowly, "nobody has been in that house. The power has been cut since February. I walk Buster past here 3 times a day. If there was a moving truck or a car, I would have seen it." She paused, looking at the empty driveway where the couch had sat. "And nobody named Greg ever lived there. The previous owners were the Millers. an elderly couple. They died in a car wreck last year. She started backing away, pulling the dog with her. You should probably go. Patrol this area for squatters. I stood there for a long time after she left. Power cut. Light had been on. The garage door opener had worked. And Greg. He had felt cold. A terrible, impossible thought started to bloom in my mind. It wasn't a ghost story. It was something biological, something predatory camouflage. The Greg I met wasn't the homeowner. He wasn't a squatter. He was a lure, the anglerfish's light. He was something constructed to get me to stop, to engage, and to take the trophy home. Couch wasn't furniture. It was a carrier. I got back in the truck. I should have driven to the dump. I should have driven to the police station. But I didn't. I drove back to my apartment. Because my wallet, my shoes, my keys were in there. And deeper than that, I had this sick, heuristic need to know what I had invited into my life. I parked the truck. It was noon now. The apartment complex was busy. I waited for a neighbor to come out of the building so I could catch the security door before it closed, sparing me the need for a key I didn't have. I walked up the stairs. The hallway smelled of carpet cleaner and dust. I reached my door. It was unlocked. I remembered locking it. I remembered the chain, but now it was cracked open about an inch. I pushed it open slowly with my foot. Hello, I called out, silent. But the smell, that copper and musk stench, was so thick now I could taste it. It coated the back of my tongue. I stepped inside. The living room was dim. I had left the blinds closed. Only light came from the open front door behind me. The couch was there. But it was wrong. Cushions were scattered on the floor. The frame of the sectional was exposed, and sitting on the exposed wooden slats of the frame, right where the eye had been, was a man facing away from me, staring at the blank TV screen. He was wearing a polo shirt and khaki shorts. I whispered. The name tumbled out before I could stop it. The figure didn't flinch. He sat with perfect, unnatural stillness. His posture was rigid, his spine straight as a rod. I went to the house, I said, trembling. I was gripping the door frame so hard my knuckles were white. The neighbor said nobody lives there. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, the figure began to turn its head. It didn't turn its body, just the neck. It rotated past the point where a human neck should stop. There was a wet, grinding sound, like cartilage popping. He looked at me. It was Greg's face. It looked like a wax mask that had been left in the sun too long. The skin was too smooth, too shiny. Features were slightly drifted. His left eye was a centimeter lower than his right. His mouth was a tight, horizontal line that seemed to have no lips, just a slit in the skin. And his eyes, they were the milky, unblinking orbs I had seen in the couch. He stared at me for a full 10 seconds without breathing. Chest didn't rise or fall. Then he smiled, but the smile didn't use muscles, like someone pulling a drawstring. The corners of his mouth just hoisted up toward his ears, revealing gums that were gray and teeth that looked soft. Comfortable, he said, didn't match the one from yesterday. Yesterday, he sounded like a bored suburban dad. Now, sounded wet. It sounded like air bubbling through thick liquid. It buzzed in a way that human vocal cords can't produce. He stood up. The movement was all wrong. He didn't use his hands to push off. He just unfolded. His knees snapped straight with a sickening crack, taller than before. His arms hung down too low, the fingertips brushing the top of his knees. He took a step toward me. His walk was a shuffle, jerky and uncoordinated, like a marionette being controlled by someone who had never seen a human walk before. His head remained perfectly still, locked onto mine, while his body shuddered underneath it. "Refund?" he asked. The word was garbled, synthesized. He tilted his head like a bird examining a worm. I looked down at his hands. His fingers were long, too long, and at the end of each finger, where the nail should be, was just raw, red flesh. I realized then where the fingernail in the couch had come from. He was shedding. He was falling apart. Or maybe molting. "What are you?" I breathed. He took another step. He was halfway across the living room now. Smell was radiating off him in waves, burning my eyes. He didn't answer. He just kept that wide grin plastered on his face. Then his jaw dropped open, not just open, it unhinged. It dropped 4 inches, stretching the skin of his cheeks until it became translucent. From deep inside his throat, I heard a sound. It wasn't a roar. It wasn't a scream. It was a recording. It was my voice. This still available. It was the exact audio of me speaking, played back through wet meat. "Is this still available? Is this still available?" He repeated it over and over, the tempo increasing, his body starting to vibrate with the intensity of the sound. He raised those long, wrong arms, reaching out for me. Illusion of humanity was gone. The Greg suit was failing. And whatever was wearing it was done, pretending to be polite. I didn't wait to see what happened when he reached me. I slammed the door. But as the latch clicked, I heard a sound that froze my blood. It was the sound of fabric ripping, a massive, wet tearing sound. And then a heavy thud against the other side of the door. He wasn't walking anymore, throwing himself. I held the doorknob with both hands, my body weight thrown against the wood, crying silently as the thing on the other side slammed against it with the force of a battering ram. Wasn't the rhythmic thud of a human shoulder. It was a wet, heavy collision, a massive side of beef being swung into the door again and again. The wood splintered around the deadbolt, crying out in high, pitched cracks that echoed through the silent hallway. I could hear it changing on the other side. Weren't human anymore. No more Greg voice. No more footsteps. The sound of wet clay being slapped onto a table. The sound of bones snapping and rearranging. And that terrible, ripping fabric noise, like canvas tearing under extreme tension. I looked down at the gap beneath the door and saw a fluid, pinkish substance oozing through the crack, thick like pudding, smelling of copper and lemon cleaner. It was trying to get under. I realized with a jolt of primal terror that the door wasn't going to hold, and worse, I didn't have my truck keys on the kitchen counter, right next to where that thing had been sitting. I was barefoot, unarmed, and trapped in a second. Floor hallway with a biological nightmare that was currently liquefying itself to get to me. I let go of the door, stumbling back, my breath coming in short, jagged gasps, just as the wood around the lock finally gave way. The door didn't open, it bowed outward, the center snapping, and a hand, if you can call a bundle of long, pale fingers with no joints a hand, shot through the splintered hole, groping blindly into the hallway air, the fingers stretching like taffy, searching for heat. "Hey, what the hell is going on out here?" The voice boomed from the end of the hall, making me jump so hard I nearly bit my tongue off. It was Mr. Henderson from 2B, a retired mechanic who looked like a bulldog in a grease-stained tank top. He was standing in his doorway, holding a baseball bat, looking furious at the noise. I opened my mouth to scream at him to run, to tell him to get back inside, but the thing in my apartment heard him first. Groping hand instantly retracted back through the hole in the door. The slamming stopped. The oozing stopped. Way fell into that dead, heavy silence that I had come to associate with the couch. Then, inside my apartment, a voice called out. It wasn't the digital, garbled voice from before. It was my voice, perfect cadence, trembling with fake fear. "Help me, please! He's inside! He's got a knife!" "Mr. Henderson, help." It was a recording of me, likely pieced together from the Times. I'd said hello to Henderson in the laundry room, thusized into a plea for help. Mr. Henderson's face went from angry to protective in a split second. His bat tighter and stepped into the hall, eyes locked on me. "You stay back!" He yelled at me, confused, any related organization, thinking I was the attacker, because the voice was coming from inside the apartment. "I'm calling the cops," he shouted at the door. "Hang on, son. I'm coming." He marched toward my door, the monster that was wearing my voice like a suit. "No," I screamed, waving my hands frantically. "That's not me!" "Mr. Henderson, don't open that door." "That's not me?" But the confusion was too much for him. He saw me in the hall, heard me in the room, and his brain couldn't reconcile it fast enough. He reached for the handle of my shattered door. The door exploded. It didn't swing open, blasted off its hinges as a mass of beige fabric and wet red muscle surged into the hallway like a tidal wave. Mr. Henderson didn't even have time to swing the bat. The entity hit him with the force of a freight train, human-shaped anymore. It was a grotesque hybrid of the sectional sofa and the Greg. Biomass, microfiber, fabric was stretched taut over a frame of jagged, protruding bones, pulsing with veins the size of garden hoses. The cushions were actually sacks of flesh, hiving with breath. And in the center of the mass, the Greg face was now the size of a shield, stretched wide, unhinged to reveal row after row of those soft, gray teeth. It engulfed Mr. Henderson, the only word for it. It didn't bite him. It folded over him. Any related organization, the couch section snapped together like a Venice flytrap, sandwiching the screaming man between the two main pieces. I heard the sickening crunch of ribs breaking, followed by a wet squelch as the entity compressed. Mr. Henderson's scream was cut short, replaced by a gurgling sound that mimicked a drain backing up. The entity sat there, in the middle of the hallway, vibrating, the fabric turning a dark, sodden crimson as it absorbed the fresh biological material. It was feeding, and as it fed, I saw new limbs starting to sprout from the back of the sofa. Short, thick stumps that looked like Mr. Henderson's legs. It was incorporating him. I turned and ran. I didn't think, I didn't plan. I just let the adrenaline pilot my body. I sprinted toward the stairwell, my bare feet slapping against the dirty carpet. Behind me, I heard the heavy, wet dragging sound of the thing pursuing me. It was fast, surprisingly fast, for something that moved by shuffling. It sounded like a heavy piece of furniture being dragged across a floor, mixed with the scuttling of a crab. Scrape, thud. "Wait!" it called out. The voice was now a horrific chorus. My voice overlaid with Mr. Henderson's gruff baritone, vibrating in a chaotic harmony. "Art not done." I burst through the fire door into the stairwell, grabbing the railing and practically vaulting down the flight of stairs. I missed a step, twisting my ankle. The pain felt distant, like it was happening to someone else. I scrambled up, limping, practically falling down the second flight to the ground floor. I could hear the fire door above me slam open, the metal groaning as the massive bulk of the entity squeezed through. It was pliable. It compressed its bones to fit through tight spaces, just like a rat. I hit the lobby door and burst out into the parking lot, the bright midday sun blinding me for a second. I didn't have my truck. I didn't have a weapon. I was standing on the asphalt, barefoot, in a torn T-shirt, while people walked their dogs and unloaded groceries. A guy washing his car looked at me, startled by my appearance. I screamed at him, pointing back at the building entrance. "Get out of here! Run!" He just stared at me, holding his sponge, thinking I was on drugs. And then the lobby doors shattered, sprayed across the sidewalk as the entity erupted from the building. In the sunlight, it was even worse. Fabric was glistening with slime. The Greg face had migrated to the top of the mass, looking like a turret, its eye swiveling independently. But it stopped at the threshold of the shadow cast by the building awning. It hesitated. The sunlight seemed to burn it, the pale flesh where the fabric had rip-sizzled and smoked. It recoiled, letting out a sound that was half hiss, half static. It couldn't come into the direct light. It was an ambush predator of dark living rooms and basements. It stayed in the shadow of the doorway, vibrating with rage, blocking the exit. But I knew it wouldn't stay there forever. The sun was going to set in 6 hours. And now it had Mr. Henderson's memories. It knew the layout of the complex. It knew where the maintenance keys were. It wasn't just a monster anymore. It was a contagion. I turned and ran toward the main road, leaving the confused car, washer to his fate, praying that the thing was too full to eat again immediately. I don't know how long I ran. The soles of my feet were shredded, leaving bloody footprints on the hot pavement. Any related organization, but the pain was distant, muted by the screaming alarm, bell of pure survival instinct ringing in my skull. I didn't look back. I knew if I looked back and saw that beige, fleshy mass skittering down the sidewalk in broad daylight, my heart would just stop. I made it to a gas station about a mile down the road. One of those 24-hour places with flickering fluorescent lights and a clerk locked behind bulletproof glass, the only island of safety I could see. I slammed my body against the glass door, hyperventilating, my hands leaving sweaty streaks on the pane. "Open the door," I screamed. "Please, call the police." The clerk, skinny kid with headphones around his neck, looked up from his phone with wide, terrified eyes. He didn't buzz me in. He looked at my torn shirt, my bleeding feet, the wild look in my eyes, and he reached for the silent alarm under the counter. "Buddy, you need to leave," he said through the intercom. "Tinny, I'm calling the cops." "Good," I yelled, looking frantically over my shoulder at the road. The sun was dipping below the horizon. The shadows were getting long. It hates the light. But the light is leaving. Call them! Tell them to bring guns! Tell them to bring fire! I slumped down against the brick wall outside the door, hugging my knees. I couldn't go back out there. I was trapped between a locked door and the oncoming night. 20 minutes, nothing happened. The sky turned a bruised purple, then a deep, suffocating blue. Streetlights flickered on with a menacing buzz. Every car that passed made me flinch. Rustle of a plastic bag in the wind sounded like fabric tearing. Then the phone inside the gas station rang through the glass as the clerk picked it up. He frowned. He looked at me, then back at the phone, said something, nodded, and hung up. He pressed the buzzer. Click. Hey? The kid said, cracking the door open. That was your dad. He said, you had a breakdown. Said he's coming to get you. Told me to let you in and give you a water. My blood ran cold. My dad? I whispered. My dad died 4 years ago. The kid's face went pale. But he knew your name. He knew you were here. The lights in the parking lot died. All of them. The canopy lights, the street lamp on the corner, the illuminated sign. The only light left was the dim emergency glow from inside the store. And then I heard it. Wasn't the shuffle, drag sound anymore. It was a heavy, rhythmic thumping on the metal roof of the gas station canopy above us. Thump, 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 wrecking ball being dropped over and over. Lock the door, I said, my voice trembling. The kid stammered. Lo si que te do. I tackled the kid, shoving him back inside and slamming the glass door shut, fumbling for the deadbolt. I twisted it, just as something heavy landed on the concrete right in front of the entrance. Hiding anymore. The entity rose up in front of the glass. It had grown. Consuming Mr. Henderson had given it mass. It was no longer just a couch thing. It was a towering, architectural nightmare of flesh and furniture. The beige fabric was stretched so tight it was translucent, revealing pulsing red organs underneath. It stood on 4 legs. 2 were the wooden block legs of the sofa, and 2 were human legs, thick and hairy, ending in stumps where the feet had been absorbed. Part was the face. It had integrated them. Greg's face was still there, near the top, but now Mr. Henderson's face was fused into the chest of the creature, right in the center of the seat cushion. Henderson's eyes were wide, rolling madly, and his mouth was open in a silent, eternal scream. Kid behind me started screaming for real. The entity pressed Greg's face against the bulletproof glass. Sam, The voice came from the intercom speaker above us, bypassing the glass, broadcasting on a radio frequency. Open up, we are family now. It raised one of its massive, wrapped limbs and hammered the glass. Seek. Spiderwebs of white fractures exploded across the pane. Bulletproof glass. It was meant to stop a .45 caliber round. One hit from this thing, and it was buckling. I yelled at the kid, grabbing him by his hoodie. Is there a back door? Storage! He shrieked, pointing to the back. Through the cooler. We scrambled over the counter, knocking over displays of gum and lighters. I grabbed a handful of lighter fluid bottles from the rack as I ran. I didn't know if it would work. All I had. We burst into the walk-in cooler. The cold air hit us instantly, ran through the rows of beer and soda to the heavy steel door At the back. I slammed my shoulder into the push bar. It didn't budge. Blocked. Or locked from the outside. From the front of the store, I heard the glass shatter. It sounded like a car crash. The bell above the door chimed. A cheerful ding. Dong announcing the arrival of death. "His here?" The kid whimpered, curled up on the floor among the kegs. I looked around. We were trapped in a metal box. One way in, one way out. "Get up," I hissed, uncapping the lighter fluid. "I have to fight." "I can't." "Do you want to become part of the furniture?" I slapped him hard. "Get up. Do you have a lighter?" He fumbled in his pocket and pulled out a Bic. "Okay," I said, my hands shaking so hard I sprayed fluid on my own shoes. "When it comes through that door, I'm going to soak it. Understand?" We waited. The silence stretched out, heavy and suffocating. I could hear the hum of the refrigeration units. Then the sound of glass bottles clinking. It was in the cooler. Of shelving were high. I couldn't see it, but I could hear it squeezing down the aisle. Squelch. Drag. Squelch. Hunting by scent. "Mr. Henderson." The entity spoke, the voice coming from the beer aisle. "Are you?" It was taunting us. It was playing with its food. I signaled the kid to stay back. I crept forward to the end of the aisle, holding the bottle of fluid like a grenade. I peeked around the corner. There. It had compressed itself flat to fit between the shelves, like a cockroach. Its body was wide and low, distorted and stretched. Henderson's face saw me. The eyes locked onto mine. "Argh!" Henderson's mouth screamed, betraying us against its will. The entity surged forward. It moved with terrifying speed, legs scrabbling on the slick tile floor. I squeezed the bottle. A stream of lighter fluid arched through the air, dousing the beige fabric, the Greg face, the Henderson face, as it hit the wet, exposed muscle. "No," I screamed at the kid.
I GT.
The kid stood up, froze, and dropped the lighter. "No, no, no," he whimpered. The entity was 5 feet away, its mouth, a vertical slit running down the center of the sofa, opened wide, dripping yellow bile. I dove for the lighter. I slid across the floor, my fingers grazing the plastic. The entity's limb lashed out, catching my ankle. It felt like a vice grip. Cold, wet, and incredibly strong. It yanked me backward. I screamed as I was dragged toward the maw. I clawed at the floor, my fingernails tearing on the tile. I kicked back with my other foot, landing a solid blow right in the center of Mr. Henderson's face. Entity recoiled slightly, loosening its grip. I grabbed the lighter. I didn't stand up. I didn't aim. I just flicked the wheel and threw it at the thing. The flame caught the fluid instantly. Osage. It wasn't a normal fire. It was violent. The synthetic fabric of the couch, any related organization combined with the lighter fluid and whatever gases were building up inside that biological nightmare, went up like a bomb. The entity shrieked, a sound I will never forget. A multi-tonal scream of 3 different human voices and something distinctively other, thrashed wildly, knocking over shelves of beer. Glass shattered everywhere, mixing with the burning fluid. Fire spread to the cardboard cases, to the alcohol. The entity released me, rolling on the floor, trying to smother the flames. But the fire was melting the synthetic shell. I could smell burning plastic and cooking meat. Run. I grabbed the kid, dragging him up. We didn't go out the back. We couldn't. We ran right past the burning, thrashing mountain of flesh back toward the front of the store was intense. As we sprinted past, a burning arm, Mr. Henderson's arm, swung out blindly, missing my head by inches and knocking a display of motor oil into the fire. The flames roared higher, turning the cooler into an incinerator. We burst out of the cooler into the main store and scrambled through the shattered front window, cutting ourselves on the glass shards. We tumbled onto the concrete of the parking lot, gasping for air. Behind us, the gas station interior was glowing orange. Sprinkler system triggered, but it wasn't enough. The fire had found the accelerants. I scrambled to my feet, grabbing the kid, and we ran. We ran until our lungs burned, crossing the street, heading for the subdivision lights in the distance. We didn't stop until we heard the explosion. It wasn't the pumps. Thank God. But the pressure inside the store blew the windows out. We turned around to see a column of black smoke rising against the night sky. And inside that inferno, silhouetted against the flames, I saw it one last time. It wasn't dying, standing in the doorway of the burning store. The fabric was gone, burned away. What was left was a raw, skeletal structure of bone and red muscle, standing on two legs now, watching us. It raised a hand. Even from that distance, I swear I heard it. My voice, clear as a bell, through the sirens approaching in the distance. Transaction. Pending. Then, any related organization. It turned and shambled away into the darkness behind the station, disappearing into the woods. Report says the gas station fire was arson. They say I was hallucinating from smoke inhalation and stress. Say Mr. Henderson is a missing person, likely a runaway, any related organization, though they can't explain why his teeth were found fused into the melted slag of the cooler door. I didn't fight them on it. How do you explain that a piece of furniture ate your neighbor? I don't live in apartments anymore. I live in a van, and I sleep in a sleeping bag on the bare metal floor. I don't own a single cushioned item. If I go to a restaurant, I sit on a wooden stool. If I visit friends, I stand. I can't handle the feeling of foam compressing under my weight. I can't handle the warmth that might be lingering there. I know it's still out there. Transaction pending. That's what it said. It means the deal isn't done. It's out in the woods. Maybe it's found a new shell. Maybe it's a mattress now. Maybe it's a car seat. So, every time you see a free listing online or a couch sitting on the curb, check the seams. Check for a pulse. And to the thing that wears Greg's face and sleeps in the upholstery. Let's not meet.